Thank you for tuning in to Androna Talks Radio, gathering as one in our sovereign truth from a galactic perspective, exploring our world with new ideas, knowledge, and a promise of a better future. Galactic discussions for galactic-minded people. Androna Talks.
Hello everyone. I have some information that came in regarding a vision that I had recently. Maybe it was a couple of weeks ago, before some of the different things that Peter had experienced. And it was very strange. It was a two-headed snake. So I started to think about, what does this mean? I see, to see a two-headed snake, it sort of came up randomly. It felt like it was highly menacing and creating a lot of problems in our reality. Almost as if it was unleashed in some way. So what I did was I began to research a little bit about it, and things started to come together. So as you can see, I found this particular site from Wikipedia, but it's ancient Greek, mythological ant-eating serpent. It's a mythological ant-eating serpent with a head at each end. The creature is alternately called the Amphisbaena, and obviously you can see there's many variations of the name. The last two both are feminine, but also known as the mother of ants. Its name came from the Greek word amphis, meaning both ways, meaning to go. And so it was spawned from the blood that dripped from the Gorgon Medusa's head as Perseus flew over the Libyan desert with her head in his hand, after which Cato's army then encountered it along with other serpents on the march. Amphisbaena fed off of the corpses left behind. The Amphisbaena has been referred to by various poets, such as, and then, there's a whole list of the poets that have referred to it. So it's kind of an interesting looking creature. It sort of, even has a wing, which is really strange. And it's not to be confused with the Ouroboros, because the Ouroboros is a snake, but it has a tail, but it's swallowing its tail. Here it almost has that type of, circular infinity symbol, but it's not. So I'm not just trying to give you a lesson on this particular mythological ant-eating serpent, but to try to discover why I was seeing a two-headed serpent. So here is something else that this two-headed serpent is thought to represent many things. Since a snake sheds its skin, it emerges anew, and thought to represent rebirth and resurrection, the two heads representing both the earth and the underworld. And it can mean indecision or having conflicting ideas. Some think that tacking its skin to the outside of a home prevents cold and protects from the cold, and other cultures think it brings rain or wealth. So there's a lot of people are like, well, why are you picking on the snake? It's a natural creature, has a purpose, and it's part of our ecosystem where there are predators and then things that are preyed upon, and so we know this is how our world is. So, but still, this is not the symbology of what I was looking at. I was looking at something much more menacing, and many of you know that snake becoming a part of the medical symbol, right? And that's not going to work very well. So anyhow, here's another variation of the two-headed snake. This was a little bit more of what I was seeing. Although I can't exclude that the other type that I just showed was definitely another candidate for the same energy. And what I'm looking at more is not just a regular snake or a snake that has some kind of anomaly, whether it's two heads or something unusual about it, but rather an astral being, and that is representing this snake. So then I came to this, and I'm going to read this, and I don't know, maybe you're interested, you're not interested, but I found it quite fascinating. And I hope, no one gets offended. This is a Native American story, and I want to respect it. It's also related to the Mohawk, who technically lived around 4 to 5 hour drive from where I live. And, it's a tradition and knowledge of these people that I was acquainted with early on in my childhood. The Iroquois Indians, something I learned about in school, and we became familiar with them. We knew the type of houses that they built. We knew how their lifestyle, and also they had a gathering of more than one of their nations, the Iroquois nations, and became very coordinated. And also there was a lot of symbolism of what they had done. So as this story is told by Stuart, I'm sorry if I say it wrong, Mio, of the Mohawk Traditional Council of the Kanawake, and I'm not sure if that's correct either, but anyhow, one day a young boy had found a two-headed serpent or snake whose skin had beautiful colors with gold and silver stripes down its back. But it was very sickly, unable to care for it and to feed itself. It was on the very door of death. This was due to the fact that one head wanted to go left while the other wanted to go right. One wanted to move while the other wanted to stay still. Basically, one head didn't know what the other was doing. So this is a vision. This I can respect someone who has a story, a vision, or a tale that was passed on, because the symbolism helps us to understand something that is to come in the future. So now they're in their own interpretation. The Mohawk people interpret this story. So one day the people found a strange-looking being who had a strange metal skin made of gold and silver and covered with bright-colored cloth, washed up on the shore of Turtle Island. Turtle Island being the earth. These beings were very sick, cold, hungry, and near death, and they were very confused, for one spoke of peace while his counterpart killed everyone. One was called church, and one was also called state. They also hissed, a very strange language. So here's an example of the early settlers that came into this reality and came over into the Americas, and they're wearing these strange metal and gold covered bright colored cloth. It sounds like wearing like conquistadors of some sort. So getting back to the vision, the young boy brought the serpent to his village. The elders were very cautious of it, but everyone loved its beautiful colors and felt sorry for it. The young ones said, "It's so poor. How will it survive? Look at how helpless it is. Surely it will die with the coming of winter. Please let us keep it." The elders agreed, saying, "Oh, okay, you can keep it, but not in the house. And remember, if you want to keep it, you will have to feed it." So now here is the modern interpretation of that. The true people brought them to our villages, welcomed the beings into our home, fed them, gave them shelter, and brought them back to life by curing their sickness and disease. Unable to hunt and unknowledgeable of the land, our people helped the strange beings build their own villages and gave them food. In exchange, they offered their bright cloth and metals. Okay, so we know the early settlers came over. They weren't prepared for the winters. They weren't prepared for what was ahead of them. They didn't know of course, they didn't have any farms. They didn't know what they could eat and what they couldn't eat. I mean, this was really a new land for them, and so with the help of the native people, they got through. You know, didn't die and were able to thrive in that point. The next part of the vision is the children fed it insects, but the snake wanted more, so they fed it field mice. I just want to point out, we were talking about the snake over here, weren't we? The snake fed it insects, the mother of ants. And it says that, yeah, I guess that they hunt ants. Okay, so, getting back. I just thought that was an interesting coincidence. So they fed it field mice, but the snake wanted more. They fed it rabbits and small birds, but the snake wanted more. Finally, with this serpent getting so big, the elders began hunting our brothers, the beavers and otters, to feed the snake, but the snake didn't seem to get enough. So symbolically, the people that came over, have an unending hunger, a ravenous desire for. It was more than food, and you'll see as we go on further. Their explanation is right here. Our people brought the strange beings food and supplies to exchange for the bright cloth and metals, but the strange beings always wanted more and more. These strange beings requested more food, more supplies, which evolved into the fur trade. Our people began to see that they would destroy life for profit. We understand that. The serpent, now was too big to handle, began eating our dogs, and then our food supply, the gardens and the deer, and then all our spirit guides. Now that sounds really odd. They're saying that the serpent began eating dogs. Just recently, Peter talked about how they're asking people to eat dogs. And then also saying that they wanted the gardens, the deer, and then our spirit guides. So we know that we're talking about astral beings, because humans cannot consume spirit guides. So the spirit, the energy behind the conquistadors, or this group that they're referring to, had an energy that was ravenous, this unending desire for something. And when that was not enough, the serpent finally began eating our people. It ate the children, the elders, and any who were not fast enough to get away. So horrible was this serpent that it even ate our dead, something that our people had never seen. So down here, this is their interpretation of what had happened. The strange beings multiplied quickly. Just as quick, they forgot their kindness they were shown and began talking about taking without asking. They killed our children with false gifts of chickenpox infected blankets. Those children they didn't kill, they stole from us and put them in residential schools. They killed the elderly medicine men who saved them and desecrated our burial grounds. There's history about that happening. I think there were a lot of mistakes that were made. But was there an energy behind this that we haven't looked at? Were humans being drawn to come to this land to commit these some of these spiritual crimes against other humans? And so let's continue on with the story. When this two-headed serpent began eating whole villages, and in the process it enslaved many of the people. The native people were enslaved, especially many of the tribes. And there's a very terrible story about the Wampanoag and Cherokee, and I would say just about all the tribes felt this pressure because they were taking land, overstepping boundaries, and so it created tensions. And so in order to continue doing that, the desire, the need for expansion is like a hungry snake, isn't it? Then it started traveling the countryside looking for more villages to eat. Along the way, it started eating anything in its path, the forest, all the animals, and the countryside itself. When you see the way that they take down the forests, it does seem like they're consuming it or cutting it down for firewood, and the increase of population does deplete a lot of things. So here it said it ate holes through the mountains that were in its way, and it poisoned our waters with its defecation. So we know all the roadways that were created and some of the unclean practices that we have, even still today, with all of the trash and chemicals and so forth. So they were bloodthirsty. They needed the constant rush of murder to flow through their veins. They destroyed villages, then nations, allowing only those to live who would succumb to their false religion and government. I thought that was interesting, their false religion. They killed the forest, the buffalo, and made whole species extinct. False government, too. They destroyed the earth for its minerals, gold rush, and stained the waters with blood. After traveling the entire country, it began to backtrack, to totally destroy the land by poisoning anything that may have been undisturbed. All the animals were completely poisoned, as was the ground. The forests that were missed were now devoured. The waters that were not damaged were now completely poisoned also. When the land itself was enslaved, then they moved in for the kill with industrial revolution, littering the countryside with pollution factories. They strip mined the land of its internal organs. The earth is a living thing, and a lot was taken from it, even still today. They clear-cut the lungs out of our mother and pumped the disease into her veins, poisoning her blood, bringing her to the brink of death. Finally, after our mother Earth was destroyed and there was nothing left for the two-headed serpent to consume, it then started to eat the sky world. Here again, the sky people. I talked about this and how they kept on stripping everything. I have never seen this article. I just saw this about a week ago. And when I started reading, I couldn't believe it. But you all know that I talk about the sky people, and the sky people destroy nature, essentially. I'll put a link on the end if people want to listen to that. It was something out of my book called Macabre, Short Stories and Poems from the Other Side. So it was said that it would make its way to our grandmother. So who's their grandmother? The nighttime sun, the moon. And that it would even try to destroy our eldest brother, the sun. And that from there it would attack our cousins, the stars. So finally, with the Industrial Revolution and the advancement of sciences, these strange beings became so smart that they created the ultimate weapon to wage war against our Mother Earth, nuclear power. They punched holes in the sky world, enabling them to leave the incubus of our mother, free to attack and destroy the rest of the Great Spirit. But it was also said that when the serpent would be near the end of its destruction of our Mother Earth, that the earth would fight back to cleanse herself. And then he said, recently weather patterns have been very treacherous, killing many people around the world and destroying the infrastructure, the economy of the two-headed serpent. At this time, the serpent will be weakened by the natural powers released from our mother's revolt, revealing itself for what it really is. The serpent will create its own demise and begin to destroy itself. Presently, the church is being revealed for what it truly represents through the scandals of rape, abuse, internal corruption, lawsuits, over $100 million in North America alone, and its sexist nature. The church is losing its flock of sheep, leaving it with very little money to sustain itself, forcing the church to close down many of its parishes to sell off its supposed property. Also, though its own greed and its insatiable appetite for destruction, one head will begin to eat the other and would destroy itself through internal conflict, and that all it has enslaved to the work, all it has enslaved to work for it to keep it alive will revolt against it. So here's their interpretation. The state is also on the verge of collapse. People around the world have lost faith in government. Mistrust for politicians is at an all-time high. Governments are having to tax their people to death and are constantly using war as an economic booster, which is casting practically the whole world into revolution. Even when real people with good intentions are elected into government, people still distrust, for everyone is discovering that people are just a window dressing in a government. For no matter what people say or want, it's still controlled by big business. This is when, while it distracts itself, a young boy would come again with the power of the hair of the clan mothers, would make a bow that would thrust his arrows straight and true into the head of the two-headed serpent. When the serpent rolls over and dies, it is said that the young boy will climb atop the huge monster's belly, slicing it open. All the real people who were eaten up will have been released. With the male-dominated church and state destroying everything that our Mother Earth gave birth to, the female entity must stand up and defend her family. When the woman, in accord with the great law of peace, bring the true men back to life, then the men will come to their senses and stop their destruction. Only the women have the power to turn their poor excuses for men into real men that will fight at all costs to stop this destruction of our people and of all creation. When this is done, all people will be freed. When the serpent is destroyed, all life will once again live in the freedom in the way the Great Spirit had intended, and creation itself will blossom with the new vibrancy that has not yet been seen since the coming of the serpent. So their interpretation, when the church and the state falls into its own hand, and through the suppression of the female entity, life will return that which has not been seen since the 500 years that the serpent has been let loose on the garden. So, the last statement, this is basically the two-headed serpent prophecy. Though it may sound like a fairy tale shrouded in myth, it maintains to be the warning signs on the highway that we are all traveling together. We must remember that this prophecy was told to the 5 nations of the Iroquois Confederacy before the coming of the white man. A prophecy that was told to the 5 nations of the Iroquois Confederacy before the coming of the white man, with his church and state. Yet the prophecy has predicted precisely everything that would happen. So any rational person would contemplate that the next state of the prophecy is, what the next state of the prophecy is. And in the end, it says Brave Star. I will have a link to this if someone wants to review it. I am not Native American, but I do find prophetic writings quite interesting as a seer. I do respect that, and I understand that sometimes they're the voice, pretty much in the background, trying to tell people that we're in a situation. And even though that they knew this was going to happen in their future, they held on to this information. It helps them to understand what is going on around them. And needless to say, that you can never satisfy this snake. So what was interesting is I started thinking about the beginning part, and I was looking at this, the Superbowl. Pitchfork. Everyone was really happy about the performance of Jenifer Lopez and Shakira. And personally, I don't really care about entertainers. I love music just as much as anyone else does. I love dancing just as much as anyone else does. It's not about that. I did find it quite interesting that they were dancing in a type of, I don't know if it was Middle Eastern or combination, a fusion of it, because Shakira is Latin American but also Middle Eastern. And this is not against either one, but it is to note that the dance was very serpent-like. Here they talk about the boy found a two-headed snake whose skin had beautiful colors with gold and silver stripes. Gold, silver. It's just something to think about. Why is it that I saw the snake? Is it an accident that the Superbowl had a show that brought in a type of dance that was kind of a tribute to a snake, you know, in some ways, in a lot of ways maybe. Why is it that they were wearing gold and silver together and dancing together almost like they were a two-headed snake, the two of them connected in a way, facing each other and dancing? And I probably could get the exact point, and what I might do is get the video footage because I didn't want to play it here. And so you can see the exact point that I'm referring to, and then you make your own decision. I think that the energies can move in and out and through all different aspects of our reality, and when these astral beings make their announcement of their presence, it shows up in so many different areas. And as Peter was seeing this black snake and the colors and the red and all the different colors, and I had someone make a comment in the chat about those were Native American colors. Very true. Yeah, the four directions, the color of the black, red, yellow, green, and so that was something also that came up. And then I was searching again, and I discovered this bowl. Another thing that Peter was talking about was Sumeria. So there was a bowl from ancient Sumeria. I just want you to note it's two-headed snake right here. And we're going to open that up. This is called the Fuente Magna. It's a bowl that was found accidentally by a worker and from the Chua Hacienda property of this family by Lake Titicaca that was in the city of La Paz, Bolivia. What is interesting about this bowl is it has ancient Sumerian. It has ancient Sumerian writings. So they're trying to figure out. They believe that the researchers have been unable to read the writing because they refuse to compare it to Proto-Elamite and Proto-Sumerian writing. with the other writing systems used in 3000, 2000 BC. And so Peter was seeing this, and I thought, well, that's really interesting. He was seeing Sumerian writings, not necessarily this bowl, but I started looking at the posture of this being right here. That looked very much like the Giga. This is the Codex Giga that he was talking about. You can see the hands up, legs, feet out, crouching down. Doesn't have horns. Hands up, feet down. It's like he's holding something up. Two-headed snake. And look at this huge book. This is what Peter was referring to as he was seeing Sumerian text, the size of this large book all over the place in the reality that, or wherever he was in that existence. So, the snake being connected to this Devil's Bible. Oh, that's someone's. I want to go to someone's page here, but that's let's see. There's a lot written about this stuff, but this is the largest cursed manuscript in the world, the Devil's Bible. Supposedly it was created by a pact with the devil from a monk. The legend is a manuscript was created one night by a monk who was sentenced to death. The monk was accused of demonic arts. His sentence was to be walled up alive. The night before the execution, the monk made a pact with the devil. Leaving aside the legend, experts say that for a person to complete the manuscript without illustrations, it would take at least 5 years of continuous work. In realistic terms, this equates to about 30 years of dedicated work. However, the following analysis done by the graphologist, it showed that the writing was done by a single person. The creator had maintained consistency throughout the entire work, and this probably contributed to the legends around the Codex. That supposed creation took a single day. And so this, some interesting things. Oh, yeah, before I forget. His tongue looks like two snakes, doesn't it? Yeah. And Peter also talked about the nails, like a woman scratching on something and making a loud noise. So, what does this mean? This means that something's happening, that there's some interesting things. The announcement of the presence of the two-headed snake displayed in the Superbowl, and probably many other areas through visions and insights of two-headed snake, and then which leads up to this prophecy. We talk about Nostradamus. We talked about, he used the word chaos, mayhem. And you can see easily how this energy was sent here to consume, to cause a lot of problems. And so maybe, with the understanding of what these things are, we can set an intention that we don't consent, we don't agree to this agenda. We ask to be freed. And if there is the beginning part for the young boy, no, at the end, the intention is that in the end they feel that someone is going to destroy this snake in the end. So, well, I mean, that's what has to happen. Otherwise, you have something that is never satisfied. It won't be satisfied until everything's gone. And that's the way it is. So, that's all I have for you here. I'm sure that some of you have some other pieces to this story. Please share it underneath, and let's take a look at this together. Thank you for listening, and have a good day.
You have been listening to Androna Talks Radio. Join us on YouTube channel Jessica Errol Morocco, and visit her website at www.readingsbyariel.com.